With a record 20 Premier League titles, Manchester United is the biggest club in the world. They were the first club in the history of English football to achieve the treble.
A team built to win, but to win with wonder and wizardry, a dream team.
Under legendary manager Sir Alex Ferguson, they ruled the world. They had superstar warriors like Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, they have Anthony. Ever since Ferguson's departure, United has lost its elite status. They have not been taken seriously as title contenders for over a decade and consistently bounce in and out of the Champions League. From a managerial merry-go-round to terrible recruiting to drama in the locker room, United have lost their identity. I have read the autobiographies of the managers that came after Ferguson, and I have found all the secrets on what actually went wrong in the Manchester United dressing room, and how United went from a club of superstars to a club in crisis.
And United, I don't know what I'm going to say, it's just so poor.
And then we turn to the owners and I'm bored. I've become tired of my own club. I don't want to do their games anymore. I don't want to watch their games anymore. And that is the saddest indictment that you can have of your football club, when you become bored of watching them.
When Sir Alex Ferguson was in charge, Manchester United was on top of the world. In 1993, Manchester United won the first ever Premier League title. Then, a year later, they won it again, alongside an FA Cup to complete the first double in the club's history. United then became the first English club to do the double twice, when they won both competitions again in 1995-1996. Before retaining the league title once more in 1996-1997, with a game to spare, by the way. In the 1998-1999 season, Manchester United continued their dominance to all of Europe when they became the first team to win the Premier League, FA Cup, and UEFA Champions League, the treble, in the same season. The grip they had on the Premier League was ridiculous. Manchester United won the league again in the 1999-2000 and 2000-2001 seasons, becoming only the fourth club to win the English title 3 times in a row. Even if this United team had a season where they would go trophyless like the 2001-2002 season, they would still recover and win it again the next year. The dominance was crazy, and the hunger to stay on top was inspiring. They were resilient, they were hungry to win, which is the exact opposite of what we have seen from Manchester United after 2013. Back then, it was rare for United to have a bad season. Now it's a miracle if they can even string together 2 consecutive good seasons. United finished 6th in 2017 under Mourinho. The next year, United finished 2nd in the Premier League. But guess what happened in the 2018-2019 season? They finished 6th again. The mentality at the club is drastically different from what it used to be.
And you're looking at players when you don't know what you're going to get. These players are not good to you. You don't know what we're going to get with Manchester United. That's not if you're a small club.
In the 2023-2024 season, Manchester United had just 1 win against the traditional Big Six. Just 1.
And the problem is there is a real pattern of them not turning up in big games away from home now that you can't shake off.
What's worse than the results is the performances. Sure, they can squeeze out some wins at times from a late winner, but they genuinely look like a championship side when they play other elite teams. Just look at the fact that at times they've been in the top half of the table with a negative goal difference. I think that says it all. What allowed United to have so much longevity and success back in the glory days was their competitive mentality. They maintained this by recruiting well and creating a stable culture at the club through the youth system. United broke the transfer fee record multiple times, but they did it on players that had massive impacts for the club. United broke the English transfer fee record over the summer of 1993 with Roy Keane. Incredible recruiting, as Roy Keane became one of the greatest ever midfielders to play in the Premier League. And then in 2001, United broke their club transfer record again, signing Ruud van Nistelrooy for a reported £19 million. Van Nistelrooy ended up scoring 150 goals over the next 5 seasons. And I don't even think I have to say anything about how good this signing was. But when you look at United now, they spent €95 million on the fidget spinner. Anthony has been horrible even if he came for free. Anthony has 10 goals in 74 appearances, and honestly at times, he looks like a player that should be playing at the championship level. In 2002, when the club broke the national transfer record to sign a player, they were getting Rio Ferdinand, one of the best young defenders in the world, and he helped Manchester United to another Premier League title in 2002-2003, the club's 8th title in 11 seasons. Meanwhile, Harry Maguire, an £80 million worth defender, is responsible for this.
Or not, that was mooted as a possibility. De Gea to Maguire, and Maguire's giving it away.
Then you got guys like Sancho, Onana, Van de Beek, Depay, Angel Di Maria, Pogba, and the list goes on and on. I understand that you can't get every transfer right, like even Sir Alex Ferguson would miss. Just look at Sebastian Juan Veron as an example. But look at the track record overall. Way more good signings than bad. The players that United spent a lot of money on back in the day became some of the best players in the world. When United spends money now, the player loses half of his transfer value within the first season. It's like buying a new iPhone. As soon as you buy it, it becomes worthless because Apple just releases a newer version. One of the reasons that United's big signings used to work out in the glory days was that they had a strong culture at the club. This is how culture was implemented by Sir Alex Ferguson, according to the Harvard Business article, Ferguson's Formula. Written by Anita Elbersi, Ferguson speaks passionately about wanting to instill values in his players. More than giving them technical skills, he wanted to inspire them to strive to do better and to never give up. In other words, to make them winners. A big part of setting this winning culture was developing the youth players. Manchester United's class of '92 were a group of players who dominated at the youth level before becoming the backbone to the United team. The 6 players were David Beckham, Nicky Butt, Ryan Giggs, Gary Neville, Phil Neville, and Paul Scholes. Beckham put in 2 corners that helped Manchester United defeat Bayern Munich in the 1999 Champions League final. Gary Neville became one of the best right backs to grace the Premier League. Paul Scholes, in many people's eyes, is the greatest central midfielder to play in England's top flight. To have players become this good from your own youth academy is so important to the progress of the club. It's like buying the stock of Apple rather than the phone itself. These guys understood the values of the club and were able to pass on the ideas to the new players. The Harvard Business article stated that Ferguson recruited what he calls bad losers and demanded that they work extremely hard. Over the years, this attitude became contagious. Players didn't accept teammates not giving their all. The biggest stars were no exception. It's not just the fact that the players were incredibly talented, they also knew what it meant to represent a club like Manchester United. Recently, United have had some promising young talents come through like Kobe Mainu and Garnacho, but the culture still isn't the same as it was in the golden years.
Hey Nacho, who is this? Who is this, Nacho? Who is this?
How can there be a consistent culture within the club when the manager is getting changed every single year? In the last 11 years, Manchester United have had 8 different managers. 8. Each one with their own philosophies and style of play, so when one of them gets sacked, the next manager has to spend a year just getting rid of players to bring in his own. One thing is common among all the books that I've read about these managers. They struggled to match the culture of the Ferguson era, and the expectation of the fans were rising on them, and thus they flopped. The cycle has continued year after year, making it almost impossible to establish any consistency. Just listen to how Cristiano Ronaldo described the atmosphere of the club now.
I don't know what's going on, but since the Sir Alex Ferguson left, I saw not evolution in the club. The progress was 0.
Ronaldo is the best person to be able to talk about the change in culture as he has seen it all. He was playing under Ferguson when they won the Champions League in 2008 and were winning the Premier League titles for fun. Now, the club is a shadow of itself. Victor Valdez, a player who was only at United for a short time, has the best perspective to understand the culture of United and how it changed. An article here on The Independent states a story about how he feared for his life while training alone at Manchester United. He was exiled by Louis van Gaal, who was the manager at the time. Van Gaal claimed that Valdez had shown a lack of commitment by refusing to play with the reserves, but Valdez posted a montage of photos on Twitter that showed the reserve matches he had played in. The crazy thing is, these situations have occurred under every single manager. When Mourinho was in charge, there was a lot of tension between him and Paul Pogba. The two had a difficult relationship that ended with Pogba being stripped of the vice captaincy in 2018. Mourinho told Pogba that he would never captain his side again, as he reportedly was concerned about the Frenchman's attitude. Mourinho also questioned the seriousness of Pogba's injuries when he headed to a rehabilitation program in Miami. It's the typical clash of egos that have happened time and time again behind the scenes at Manchester United. Look at what happened between Erik ten Hag, Jadon Sancho, and Cristiano Ronaldo. Sancho and Ronaldo were signings that were made under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. They were brought in to help Manchester United make a title push after finishing second the season before. But guess what happens when Ole, the man who wanted these two signings, gets sacked? It meant that the new manager, Ten Hag, is now stuck with two players with high wages who don't fit his style of play. Despite Ronaldo being United's top scorer the season before, Ten Hag did not see him as part of his plans. He wanted his striker to be able to press and constantly move off the ball. Sancho wasn't given that much playing time, but in the rare opportunities he did get, he did not shine. Tension increased between the two players and Ten Hag, resulting in one guy being loaned back to the team he came from and the other guy heading to Saudi Arabia. Poor recruitment, big egos, terrible man management. The perfect recipe for disaster. Sir Alex Ferguson himself had a rocky relationship with guys like David Beckham, Roy Keane, and Ruud van Nistelrooy. The difference was Ferguson had authority in the locker room. He was bigger and more powerful than any of the players, meaning that in any dispute, Ferguson was always going to be the winner. Nowadays, that sort of authority is not visible in the locker room at all. The majority of the players are prima donnas, and they know that if the manager doesn't like their style of play, they just have to wait, because there's a much higher likelihood that the manager gets sacked than the player being sold. Sancho did exactly that. Instead of publicly or even privately apologizing to Ten Hag for his poor play in training, Sancho just doubled down on the idea that he was being scapegoated. He was literally not even a part of the squad. He just sat at home casually playing FIFA while earning $250,000 a week, waiting for a transfer move. Something like this would never have happened at United under Sir Alex Ferguson. The other players in the squad had way too much respect for Ferguson to let one of their teammates do what Sancho had done. Great example is the fight that happened between Carlos Tevez and Sir Alex Ferguson. Tevez had joined United on a 2-year loan, but Ferguson felt so confident in his performances that 3 months in he confirmed a fee for a permanent deal. But then when Berbatov was brought in the summer of 2008, Tevez became angry. He felt like he was being replaced as Berbatov had better link-up play with guys like Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney. Gary Neville told the Football Show in 2020 that Tevez started coming late for training, messing around. Neville said, "He was playing the club and I couldn't stand that, particularly being how I was at the time, which was a ferocious Manchester United person who never thought of anything else in my life, only United every single day." These are the type of players that United used to have in their locker room. Leaders who would hold other players accountable. Ferguson was also a true leader. As soon as he saw Tevez's poor attitude, he sold him to City in 2009. While player egos are an issue, we are forgetting the biggest villains in the building. The Glazers taking ownership in 2005 is the biggest reason for the downfall of the club.
The owners of the club, the
Glazers.
The Glazers, they don't care about the club.
The Glazers began to use Manchester United as an investment and still do to this day. They were obsessed with how much profit they could generate in their own pockets rather than maintaining Manchester United's dominance in the footballing world. Manchester United was the highest earning football club in the world for 2016-2017, with an annual revenue of €676.3 million, and the world's third most valuable football club in 2019, valued at $3.81 billion. Yet their trophy cabinet has been collecting dust since 2013. Ferguson definitely covered the cracks formed by the Glazers during his time as manager. There wasn't much talk about ownership when United were defeating Chelsea in the Champions League final in 2008, or when they beat Wigan on the last match of the season to win the Premier League. Sir Alex Ferguson was doing it all, from managing the tactics on the pitch to bringing in the right players. Just look at them taking Arsenal's captain, Robin van Persie, after one of his best individual seasons, then immediately winning their 20th Premier League title with him. Their core group of Vidic, Ferdinand, Giggs, Scholes, Park Ji-sung, Evra, and Neville helped maintain a competitive atmosphere in the team. Ferguson trusted those players and they trusted him. It meant that new signings could transition easily as the club had an identity. At this point, United could sign Mbappe and he would still flop. Besides Bruno Fernandes, there hasn't been a single signing that has elevated his game at Manchester United. Pogba only showed flashes of how good he was. Sancho looked nowhere near the player we saw at Dortmund, and Anthony has more spins than goals. Over $1 billion spent just for a Europa League trophy and a Carabao Cup. I'll tell you a funny story. When Martial was first signed, there was a Ballon d'Or clause in his contract, meaning that he would get a bonus if he won the Ballon d'Or. This is how United looks at their recruitment of players. They think way too highly of them before the player has even performed. When you watch Manchester United these days, that is if you are watching them, there is no pattern of play. You can't tell if they're a counter-attacking side or a possession-oriented side, or sometimes even if they're a normal football team. This is the result of changing managers every time you get into bad form. Ten Hag was brought in as a long-term solution, but even he has had his struggles. Ten Hag has broken records, but not the ones he wanted. Under Ten Hag's watch, United experienced their joint heaviest defeat, losing 7-0 to Liverpool. Manchester United had never conceded 23 shots in one game at Old Trafford in Premier League history until Erik Ten Hag. Manchester United had never conceded 7 goals in the opening 2 Champions League group games until Erik Ten Hag. Manchester United hadn't conceded 3+ goals in 3 consecutive games since 1978 until Erik Ten Hag. Manchester United hadn't conceded more than 1 goal in 4 consecutive league games since 1979 until Erik Ten Hag. And I could keep listing more records. What's worse is these issues won't be fixed by just simply sacking the manager. United already tried that in the years before. The managerial merry-go-round only makes it harder to develop consistency and longevity, something that Ferguson was the absolute best at. Ferguson retired as the most decorated manager in the history of football. With all the Premier League titles and the Football League Cups and the FA Cups and the Champions Leagues, I can't imagine the pain he feels when he sees what the club has become. Ferguson pushed through because he wanted to dominate their rivals Liverpool. And Liverpool have a very familiar story. To check it out, watch this video right here.